Hi everyone and welcome back to Stephan Livera podcast, brought to you by Bold, the best place to buy, sell and store your Bitcoin. You can go to getbold.io. That's for American listeners. Now, joining me on the show today, Eric Yakes, listeners, you know him, and Tyler Stevens. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
We're excited to be here, man.
Great. So yeah, we're going to chat about a few things. Obviously, I know you guys are setting up a Bitcoin space. So listeners already know you, Eric, but Tyler, do you want to just, take a minute and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah. I moved to Denver, Colorado 3 or 4 years ago. Immediately found the Bitcoin community out here, going to BitDevs and whatnot. Met Eric and a bunch of the other guys and kept showing up. All the while I was working an engineering job, but then eventually I just kept going down the rabbit hole, ended up leaving that job and wanted to work on Bitcoin full time and helped put together this Bitcoin community hub and working on some Bitcoin mining stuff as well. So just a guy in Colorado hanging out with all the Bitcoiners.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And tell us a little bit on what the scene is like in Denver. How many people do you normally get to your Bitcoin meetups and things?
Yeah, it's pretty big. We have, I think our BitDevs is getting really big. So I think once this now bull market started to turn, I think our BitDevs, we had 60, 70 people start showing up to some of our BitDevs. This was last year.
Almost 200 at the halving party.
Yeah, our halving party got pretty big. We have a pretty large technical community. Also, it's notable, Denver is also a huge ETH hub, right? They have ETH Denver every year. There's a ton of, Ethereum Foundation is out here giving a ton of grants, et cetera. So we have, a broader crypto community, and there's a lot of people kind of, towing the line. And that was one of the biggest things that we wanted to be selling on. I think that they have some sort of a common area working space. And when we're talking to potential, partners with us, I'm just look, there's this huge valuable, whether they're in crypto, whether in something completely different. Denver is one of the most valuable developer communities in the country. And we wanted to be the hub of Bitcoin and education resource for that type of community. And to those who are, in broader crypto, we want to show them that coming over to our side of the world is a much better place to be.
Yeah, and then your normal Bitcoin meetups. What kind of attendance do you get there? And tell us a little bit about what the community is like.
I think the biggest one's Bitcoin and beer.
Yeah, Bitcoin and beer. We tend to have a more social one where it's at a brewery. You can bring anyone, and then the technical BitDevs meetups as well. But what we noticed, and one of the reasons we want to get a spot is those are kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. One's hyper social, and maybe it's hard to learn, or it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're a newcomer or a novice, and then on the other end of the spectrum, one is highly technical and it's equally as hard to approach for a novice. So we wanted something in the middle. If we have our own building, we can have events on absolutely anything from Bitcoin 101, kind of going through Eric's book. Maybe there's stuff just focused on mining, some stuff for the ladies, a Bitcoin book club. We can really do it all. So we're
Fantastic,
hoping to do all.
Yeah. And for listeners, if people are new, obviously people are probably coming in and trying to figure this out. For people who are new, BitDevs is a more technically focused meetup, so that is more developer focused. But at the same time, people can go, and actually it's a great place to go if you're just observing and just trying to learn and trying to ask questions. It's a great thing to go and do, but obviously it requires a bit of work. The person who's organizing that BitDevs has to put in some groundwork to set up some of the topics and do some ground level research, and then hopefully there's other technical people as part of that community who are there to share their views on technical issues of the day or different developer issues that are coming up, whether that's in Bitcoin or Lightning or other layer 2s and things like this. So that's kind of what BitDevs is. And then usually a lot of what I've noticed around the world is, there might be a more social meetup where that's just more like a drinks thing, or maybe they have a panel every now and again, or if there's a speaker coming to town, they come and do a talk, and then people have a chance to meet and greet some person who's talking about Bitcoin or has some interesting story to share. So tell us a little bit about this idea of Bitcoin Space Denver. Why are you starting this?
It was, it kind of just happened because we had, the BitDevs was getting very large, and we were looking into different places that we wanted to move it to. We were kind of working out of CASA's office in one of their locations here for a lot of it. And then the Liberty Institute, which is a local nonprofit out here, was allowing us to use their building for a period of time. They're kind of supporting like the Libertarian Party locally in the state. And we're like, well, that inspired the conversations. And so I started talking with the guy who runs our BitDevs. And I was just like, let's see if we can get our own physical space. And, we could either, at that point in time, we're brainstorming ways of doing it. And I was like, let's do it as cool as we can. I think I don't really want to run something where it's like we set up a, organization and we bring in investors and we come up with a strategy and a business plan, et cetera. Let's see if we can do something that's a little bit more bottom up. And that was kind of how it started. So we organized all the guys. We started marketing at BitDevs. So like, hey, anybody who wants to see this happen, let's have an initial meeting. We did that initial meeting, and a lot of people got really excited. So that's kind of how it got started. And then we all just started organizing and doing weekly calls. And we're like, okay, the more people that start giving us money up front as a membership in advance, eventually we're going to get to a point where we can actually afford to get something. And our original plan was, we're like, look, we're probably going to get, a few 1,000 square foot warehouse. It's going to take us probably 5-6 years for us to get to something that's even remotely close to like a Bitcoin Park or a Bitcoin Commons doing it this way. And then we started to get a ton of traction. We had an opening night, and Tyler can probably tell you a little bit more about our opening night and how that all went.
Sure.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Eric teed it up nicely. We just found all the people that really wanted to make this happen, and we kept meeting with them. This was maybe, August, September of 2023. And eventually we were like, okay, let's try and do this. We don't really have anybody who can buy a building themselves. We weren't capital resourced. We also didn't have a company that wanted to facilitate it for us. So it was really like a bunch of people that just wanted to make it happen, that had to build together the talent to get it to work. And we were like, okay, how do we do this? We got our governance structure all set up. And then we realized this was March of 2024, we were saying to ourselves, well, we don't want to how do we run this thing? Because there's no shot caller. It's kind of a community effort. We don't want to elect ourselves to leadership positions. That'd be pretty fiat. So we had this opening launch event. We commemorated the block height. We told everyone about our plan. We walked through the governance structure, how we think, we need people to focus on X and Y and Z. And then we had everyone was invited to basically make a donation, a contribution donation, which allowed them to vote on the election process. So we had our first board of directors elected by people that donated. I think we had over 40 people there on that founding night. And then with more formal roles defined, we have a board of 9 people. 3 of them are member representatives. So they just kind of are members that come and advocate for their interests on the board. The other 6 have more responsibilities as officers, be it business development or CFO, et cetera. And we just kept building that out, asking for money, raising money, trying to offer the members the best value proposition we could when we had no building. We were selling vaporware for a little bit. We were building the Treasury, but we needed to do it such that we could showcase to a potential property owner that we could lease it out. And so that just continued for the most of 2024 until this fall when we signed a lease.
Yeah. And and I think that a lot of it was just when we were kind of a big part of it was us selling this vision of what we wanted it to be the whole time. Of here's what this could be. It could be something that's totally governed through this board system, and we can make this a nonprofit organization, and we can make it different. We're a lot of how we thought about the vision for it is, if you've ever heard of the third place philosophy. Yeah. So
if you maybe explain the third place idea and what we know.
Yeah,
why
I don't know. I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's basically just you have your home, you have your work, and then you have a third place that you go to. And that's a very, I think the argument for the third place is that it's a very healthy structure and natural phenomenon in people's lives. And there's a lot of value to that. And we kind of thought about it from that perspective. We don't necessarily want this to be some, purely technical community startup house type of place. We don't want it just to be co-working. We don't want it to also just be some sort of social club. We also don't want it to be just purely about Bitcoin. We want it to be about lifestyle in general, and a lot of the ideals of what people who are involved in this community believe So that's what we did. Is like one of the first steps when we were forming the whole thing is, I mean, we spent a lot of time like working on a charter and put together like, here's the values we adhere to. And, you know, we believe in Bitcoin, we believe in open source technologies in general, and just general values and philosophies of types of people that we think it would be good to have involved in this organization. Um, and that's kind of how we structured the whole vision around it. And I think that that's what made it a bit different to us, and it made it different to other people. And the vision that I've been telling people is, you know, I grew up in Denver. This is my home. I've been here for so long. I love this city. I think that one of the things that's pained me over the past decade is become a very, you know, we have this Californian diaspora that's been coming out here. And while that's helped, you know, with some of the more educated and more technical jobs, it's also, you know, created this very leftist leaning type of state. And I think that that's been to the detriment of Denver in a lot of different ways, and there's been a lot of decline. I've always had the vision, like, I want to influence that at some point. I want us to be able to improve this. And like, one of the big things to me, and I made a speech kind of about this at our opening night, was, you know, I joined a nonprofit board at one point after I graduated college. I was in my professional life. It was about education in the city. And I really quickly realized that a lot of nonprofits in the country are kind of more just like fraternities for adults. And they're not necessarily always structured around the true vision. I don't know how many people involved really care about the true vision. And I always kind of had in the back of my mind, at some point I want to start my own thing that actually, you know, we're doing things that matter to me. And we kind of I viewed my involvement in this kind of from that perspective. Like, this is an organization that I think we can make very influential in the local community over the long term and influence this state for the better. And so, like, that's kind of the approach that we're taking. We think Bitcoin is our superpower on kind of, you know, getting to an influential organization out here.
Yep. And then, so maybe you just want to clarify as well, like, I presume you were talking about this being like a community-driven thing. I'm curious what the view was on whether, you know, should this have been done as a commercial venture for profit, or why is it being done as a community venture? What was the main decision or discussion around that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a combination of like us not having the resources to do it ourselves, to have kind of a top-down approach or a capital venture that not that we immediately knew of, maybe in our contact list. So we immediately said, okay, we have to do it differently, but also, you know, maybe this is a cool thing to do differently, to kind of crack this. How can you start this? I think it'd be very helpful. We all thought it'd be very helpful for other people in a similar position. Maybe they've got a strong community, a strong Bitcoin turnout, high ratio to NPCs in their area, and they want to be able to create a Bitcoin hub. I think it'd be very helpful. We all thought it'd be very helpful if there was someone that had done it before, maybe documented the process. That's kind of how we leaned into this, you know, nonprofit, member-run, elected structure, I think, right?
Yeah. I think, you know, I think one of the rationales for it is it would be, I don't know. I always thought in my head it was kind of, it'd just be cooler. I think it's cooler if like it's something where if like I would want to join an organization where I truly felt that if I joined this and I, you know, wanted to commit my time and energy to it, I can have influence over it. And not to the point to where I can have a significant degree of influence over it. Like Tyler's our general manager right now. And we're going to have another board election come April. Mm-hmm. And if somebody else wanted to run for that position come April, then they're more than capable of doing it. Whether or not, you know, they're going to get elected in is a separate question. But that's something that I thought was, I think that's one of the coolest dynamics. It's like, if you wanted to become a part of this and you wanted to influence this organization and you successfully advocated on your own behalf and got involved in this and supported the people and earned trust and recognition from your peers involved, then it's totally possible that you could be leading this organization at some point. And like, that's really cool. And I think that kind of changes the incentive structure of the organization a bit.
Yeah. And you touched on it before, but maybe just you could spell out similarities, differences with, let's say, Bitcoin Park in Nashville. Like, what are you trying to do something similar, something different? What's the goal here?
I think it's similar in the sense that we're focused on, you know, education and events we have some co-working during the day, but we're really trying to build a community together. We all know each other pretty well. We're at 60 members or so right now. That is kind of the main focus. A lot of education, bringing people over to Bitcoin, tapping into that ETH talent out here. There are a lot of talented developers. They're just on the wrong project, in my opinion. So need to bring them over to Bitcoin. And the goal is just to have a hub out west for people to come to as your source of truth for Bitcoin information. Whatever's going on in the space, you come check it out here. And obviously, we have this unique aspect where, we could all get fired every April. So you can get a total different governance structure. And we've tried to set up the organization that'll live on without us moving forward into the future.
Great. And so I guess in terms of, building up the community, what's that been like in the recent, time that you guys have been there in Denver? And what's it looking like now?
Surprisingly, we've had, because we basically asked for money for 9 months without a building. We structured it formally too. We were like, we're charging membership dues, right? But we didn't have a building. And it was all to build this treasury. It was a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. I mean, surprisingly, we had like no attrition. So it was constantly just ticking upwards. People would figure out what we're working towards. They'd sit in on a couple calls that we'd do. Maybe we'd have more turnout for one over the other. And everyone would say, you know what, this is an awesome effort. It's worth $150 a month or whatever what it was to support. And, and to their benefit, 9 months later, there's a beautiful 5,000 square foot building that they have access to. So the community's been great. I think a lot of people in the Rocky Mountain area have recognized that this is open and it's growing. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think I think that it's brought a lot of people out of the woodwork. There's a good amount of people who are members of ours who are like, I haven't been involved in a long time.
True.
I've been watching from the sidelines. Very, very smart people, very influential people. So for example, somebody who reached out who hadn't been involved in the community for a little while, like the former CTO of Silvergate, who's a hardcore Bitcoiner. He's one of our members. And like he's like, yeah, I live an hour away. Like I want to be a part of this. And, there's all these people kind of like that have joined. And that's been really cool. I feel like we're at a little bit of this intersection with membership where there's people that we have a few members that I think are just, they're from the broader community and they didn't really come in as much through Bitcoin. And now they're getting a lot more exposure to this community. And that's been cool as well. We've had some, I guess, maybe more unique marketing angles for how that's occurred. I'm really not really sure. But yeah, it's there's a very diverse group of people that have joined this so far.
It's actually one of the coolest things too, when you think about, getting a bunch of people together to build a grassroots Bitcoin community hub, so to speak, really a physical place for them to congregate. All the people interested, we've just been using their talents so much because they're such awesome people. Like we have a member who, worked at IBM for 20 years doing, automation and integration for setting up infrastructure, networking infrastructure and IT and everything like that. So we're running our own server in-house and we're automating everything and we're trying to keep everything as free and open source as possible, staying away from big tech. And it's like, oh, we have the guy for that. Oh, you need to build a website? Oh, we have the guy for that. And it's just been awesome meeting all these people, seeing their talents and letting them help each other out. It's been really cool to be a part of.
Yeah.
Back to the show in a moment. This show brought to you by CoinKite.com, the creators of the best Bitcoin hardware security devices such as the Cold Card Mark IV and the new Cold Card Q. Now, we use Bitcoin hardware security devices to keep our keys offline, our private keys offline. Now, the way these work is you can do that setup, write down your 12 or 24 words on the seed word cards and keep that secure. Now you can use this device to interact with the Bitcoin network using software such as Sparrow Wallet, Electrum, or Vector Desktop, or Nunchuck as a few examples. Now you have a range of security features that you can use with these devices such as passphrases, you can use seed XOR, or my favorite is multi-signature. Now, if you're starting in a basic way, just start with the device and the USB-C cable, plug it directly to the computer and use it that way, and then later improve your setup. But I believe these devices are great at helping secure your coins, especially as you start to migrate up into multi-signature security. But don't be disheartened or don't be scared away. They are accessible, and I think you actually do learn about Bitcoin in the process. So to get yours, go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get a discount on your cold card. The lead sponsor of this show is Bold, the best place to buy, sell, and save Bitcoin. For listeners in the US, Bold lets you secure your financial future with complete peace of mind by integrating a low-fee, Bitcoin-only brokerage with next-gen multi-sig vaults. With Bold, you can smash buy Bitcoin or set a DCA plan for only 0.99% fees and seamlessly deposit the Bitcoin direct to your Bold vault. The Bold vault is a 2 or 3 collaborative multi-sig where you hold 2 keys and Bold holds 1 as a redundant backup, protecting against loss or theft. You can use Trezor, Ledger, or Cold Card hardware wallets to spin up a Bold vault in just a few minutes, and the Bold vault is the only collaborative custody vault available with 0 monthly fees. They're also offering 0 fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Try Bold today and upgrade your stacking experience over at getbold.io. And now, back to the show. Yeah. And so, how long has the space been open for, or is it open yet? Or I saw on the website there was like a launch event. Maybe you just want to clarify a bit there, yeah.
We're in it right now. This is my company Epoch's office that we're in, and yeah, so we're up and running, and we're open for membership.
We're doing launch week activities kind of just to celebrate more formally mid-November.
Great. Okay, yeah, so yeah, listeners, if you're in the area, go and check them out. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of the different, what you're planning to achieve in the different areas, whether it's, events or co-working or these other aspects. Maybe you want to touch on the co-working as well. So as I understand, you can pay a flat fee per month, and then you can have access to co-working in the space.
Yeah, we kind of lucked out with this beautiful building that we're in because there's kind of an event side, there's a lounge area, and then up top there's also some private offices that can be rented out, kind of separate from our membership. It's more just through the building owner. But whatever you're looking for is what I'm trying to get at. It's available. If you want, a private office to close the door, that is an option. It's mostly just guys setting up laptops on rolling tables around, and we've had pretty regular turnout, 4 or 5 people co-working here a day. It's not too overwhelming. You can still get work done, although it's hard for me. I'm too excited. I just want to chat with everybody, but maybe that'll fizzle out. That's the vibe in here. It's in a quiet part of Denver. It's like a residential area. We're not in the thick of downtown. It's not loud and noisy and busy. It's easy to get to. We're just a couple blocks from the train station, from the airport too, so super quick for like hit it and quit it trips. If you wanted to just show up for a weekend, maybe we're doing some events, you don't even need to get a rental car. Sorry, that was a tangent from co-working, but there's a lot of cool features of the amenities of this building. We really lucked out. It's not like a 3,000. We were literally looking at an old mining warehouse before we had more support early on. We were touring warehouses.
Where we're at now, I'm blown away. Like I thought it was gonna take us so long to get to something like this, and then we end up getting a bunch of members, and we end up being able to actually afford a spot like this. We're in the ideal location I had in my head. We're in like North Denver, which is kind of like the up and coming tech community area.
Eric lives 10 minutes away. That's why he's saying that.
Yeah, and it's close to where I live, so that was very convenient for me as well. But it's funny because like from people who've come out here, that's been a consistent point of feedback is everybody's like, oh, I can just take the light rail from the Denver airport directly here. And that makes it, if like speakers ever want to come out or anything, it's like you can just stay at the airport, hop on the light rail, and you're here in like 15 to 20 minutes. And then you can just jet back directly on that too. And that's like from a commute perspective, a lot of members have really liked that. And it's just basically ideal. And from like the building perspective, we're kind of like 1/2 of the Bitcoin Park buildings in terms of size and quality. Maybe a little bit bigger than one of those, but we're not like both of the buildings combined.
Yeah, I actually haven't been to Bitcoin Park myself. Last time I was in Nashville was like late 21, but I hope to get there at some point and visit. I hope to visit you guys as well, but my trips into the US aren't that common. Every now and then, if there's a conference or something. But well, speaking of, let's talk a little bit about events then. So what's the plan there? Are you hoping to host some, Bitcoin events or mini conferences, or what's the plan?
Yeah, most definitely. We just had our first use of the event space. Our other board member and friend Wyatt did one on the financialization of Bitcoin, and that was great. We literally had to build a stage. We learned in short order that we need to upgrade some lighting and get some actual audio visual setup, which is the fun/hard part, at least for me. But moving forward, I know Eric's part of an education committee, so really trying to curate that like introduction to Bitcoin material based off of his book, The Seventh Property. DJ Valerie Belove, shout out to her and her podcast. She's one of our local members, and she is setting up a Women in Bitcoin night. So just more of an approachable, I think, gather around the fireplace type setting, chat about Bitcoin. There's some, low effort events like that. Bitcoin Book Club, maybe we meet once a month and just talk about whatever book we read. And then all the way on the other end of the spectrum, we'd love to do like a ton of Bitcoin focused events around ETH Denver, like all week long.
Yeah. So one thing that we're planning is like a build on Bitcoin event here during ETH Denver. And we're working with a lot of the companies in the industry. So like Fedi was our first sponsor. Mm-hmm. So like we're going to be working with them on that kind of an event as well as some of the other companies. And I think that that's one of the key things that we'll be leaning into over time is trying to find ways to reach out to that community and show them what types of tools they have to start building on top of Bitcoin today.
And then lastly here, like just Bitcoin adjacent, I'd categorize them as like not purely Bitcoin events, but maybe it's, how to run your own server at home. We have the System 76 Linux-based machines and Start 9 guys out here, Matt Hill and those guys. So there's awesome talent around us. One of our board members is Jason Rick. He's a co-founder of the Beef Initiative. So maybe it's Sovereign Health and natural foods. So we're really hoping to tap into all these little things, and we've got members who are experts in a wide range of areas.
Great. And then, so I guess it's sort of, there's this community feel to it. It's not for profit. Everyone's sort of trying to chip in where they can. What about, if people need to move on, right? Like over time, you might be like, I need to work on something else. Like, I guess your hope is that you've built up the community enough that there's somebody else who can kind of come in and be the next GM or kind of people who are managing this space, right?
Yeah, it's a good question, Stephan. We are currently building the plane as it flies, and I think that we'll be able to have a soft landing at some point. But yeah,
the key probably, and we need to work a lot more on this, is documenting everything. It's putting out fires as they come up right now, but we need all this documentation because if we do have, turnover or we end up, rotating leadership positions in the board or new people come on, then just having all that documentation, and this is what we really want too, is we want all that to be, free and open source on our website. Everything on the website, like kind of a Bitcoin Citadel blueprint, so to speak. And it's like, okay, I can just kind of copy and paste. Maybe I'll make some minor tweaks, but this is how you set up a really good nonprofit governance structure. This is how you do board elections. This is how you keep it in the spirit and ethos of Bitcoin. This is how you run a home server. This is how I can do private communication channels. This is how we get our Lightning liquidity and infrastructure. I think that'd be really cool to have all that. And it should also help facilitate, switching leadership within our own organization.
Great. And then, I guess the plan as well is obviously you want to make sure you get enough sponsors and members to sort of make it sustainable. So are you well on the way there, or you still need some more support to get there? Like we're
close.
We're close
to break even.
Yeah, which is also something that happened quicker than I would have thought. I think our fiscal worries have been alleviated pretty significantly over the past few months since we officially launched it. And I think we're basically a few members away from being technically break even. But then there's break even in terms of like, if you become a board member, you should be able to get some sort of compensation and things like that. So we'll probably find a new break even to get to at a certain point. Because right now there's been quite a bit of altruism that's gone into creating this, and we don't want to be dependent upon that over the long term. But we got a little bit more juice left in our GM. We can keep squeezing some free labor hours out of them.
If we're going into a bull run, then there should be a lot of interest, hopefully.
Exactly.
And maybe that kind of helps draw in some members, but then after every bull run, you get a bear cycle. So you got to, got to be ready for that on the other side of it.
That's funny that you bring that up too, because, we have a Treasury policy where it's we keep like 1 month, like the next month worth of, operating expenses, insurance, rent, whatever, our consumables, budgets, etc. in fiat, and the rest is all in Bitcoin. Maybe we need to be calculated about that moving forward, or we need to stack a lot more Bitcoin to get ready for the next bear market.
This has been one of the interest points of debate within the organization. And it's funny because I was an advocate for the alternative when this was all starting a year ago. And then now that I'm getting really bullish right now, I've been slowly advocating for adjustments to our Treasury policy.
For the get on zero.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think you got to, because what naturally happens, right, is as the number goes up, everyone kind of naturally starts feeling more bullish and everyone feels like a genius, but you sort of have to temper that back and make sure you're okay as time goes on.
Yeah.
Not that the dollar is safe, but
One thing I'll just add on to that too is it was one of the challenges we really faced. We were like, okay, we want to keep as much Bitcoin as possible. We want to hold as little fiat as possible. We got to, hold the purchasing power and the value of everyone's donations. We're building a treasury. This is a Bitcoin focused organization. Then you realize no property owner will rent to you if you own a Bitcoin treasury. They say, show me 12 months rent in your bank account. And we go, we don't have a bank account.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was when we were starting this, and I was like, okay, so people need to think we're adults here. And like, we need to show that, we're well capitalized, we're well managed, and there's not a ton of risk. We're thinking in terms of, we need to find somebody to give us a building that we can lease from that, is going to give us some leeway, obviously, but is at least we need to be able to show them something. And then once we were able to find a property owner who was totally aligned with us and is a Bitcoiner, that's when everything else changed. It's like, oh, okay, cool. They're willing to work with us throughout some of this. And it's like, well, how much can we realistically put in? And, we have this like 1 month policy to be adjusted to a 3 month of runway. And I think over the long run, we should adjust that out to be even further, just based from like my background on like cash flow analysis for companies.
Yeah.
Probably want to apply something similar to that. But it's something where now it's like I've been making the argument internally. I'm like, we're a startup, and we need to assume a little bit more risk right now in the earlier years, and we'll well capitalized for that. And I'm making the argument that basically we keep our treasury policy open to adjustment for at least another 6 months.
Yeah, I see.
And then we can really just like set it in stone and adhere to it and subject it to like annual revisions.
Yeah. Anything on the Nostra side? Are you looking to do any events there, or do you have any connection with that, or?
Nostra?
That's a good point. I haven't really mentioned anything to the Nostra community yet about
That's a good idea, because we are really focused on like open source technology as well, using Flockster, using Nostra. That's a good idea.
Yeah, we do need to do that. We should probably talk to like Derek or somebody about it. But yeah, that's a great idea. We should do a little. I guess that's not true. Tatum Turnup has been talking about doing Nostorado out here for some time.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So you guys could host.
Yeah, we could host Nostorado out here. So I guess there is some rumblings about that. Yeah, so that's another point about us. There might be some answers to your question that are very different from other members that we're not even aware of that are going on right now. Yeah.
I love having those little niche summits or conferences as well, where you get high signal. People are there focused on, one thing. I think we can really specialize in that. That's kind of the goal.
This show brought to you by Mempool.space, the world's leading Bitcoin visualizer. And now they've got an accelerator program. So if you have a transaction that you sent at a fee that was too low to get confirmed, now you can fix this with the Mempool accelerator. The way it works, you can go and search your transaction, scroll down, click accelerator, and you don't need an account. You can pay with Lightning, and then it'll show you it's now in the process of being accelerated, and then after a few minutes, it's confirmed. And so this is a great way to help you out if you are stuck. And this can happen where maybe your wallet doesn't have RBF or CPFP, or it might help you in situations where it's impractical to go and re-sign. So for example, multi-sig with keys in different locations. And thirdly, even in some lightning scenarios, perhaps a forced close, you might not be able to use RBF. And so in this case, the Mempool Accelerator can help you out. So keep it in mind, and you can find out more over at mempool.space/accelerator. And now, back to the show. Fantastic. Yeah, so I guess, do you guys have any, I guess, you guys have both been in Denver for a while, right?
Yeah, just a few years myself, but yeah.
Okay, gotcha. But at least, Eric, you might have, I guess you've seen cycles come and go in Denver, right, in terms of Bitcoin cycles. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts on what that might look like, what that could portend, maybe more developer interest, let's say. So maybe you kind of get a round of more developer interest and then the price dies again and then there's kind of doldrums.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I feel like I wasn't
Maybe you weren't as connected into it at that point in early years.
Yeah. It's funny because like when I really didn't start getting involved in the local community until when I first released my book. A lot of my interaction was more just in the Twitterverse. And then I started to get more involved in the local community. So that was back in, that was basically last cycle because I released my book in 2021. And I feel like during that period in terms of interest, I guess at our meetups, it was probably a lot more, I don't know if they were, because I was going to a lot more Bitcoin and beers back then. And we didn't really have as many developers. I think the developer community, personally, my take is I feel like there's been a bit of a shift in the zeitgeist. I think that there's a lot more crypto developers that are starting to come to our BitDevs and are starting to have the perspective of, okay, Bitcoin is pretty cool. And they're starting to think a lot more that direction. I feel like a lot of that's happened too. Like, I don't know what you call this current market that we're in right now. I think we're in kind of a bull market, but a lot of that's basically happened over the past year is that we've seen a lot of that. And I kind of am really curious how that's going to structurally shift over time. And whether or not we're kind of witnessing this inflection point of like, quote unquote, like Bitcoin developer dominance or something that's going to start turning our direction out here. But it seems like there is a bit of more of a shift that direction happening. And that's one of our intentions is really to try to like influence that as much as we can because we have a lot of tailwinds that are starting to support us this direction. I think if we can lean into that and put together some events where we can just educate. Like the other day I was in a coffee shop and what was it? I heard the term Merkle root get thrown around by some guys next to me, and I'm like, oh boy, what are they talking about? And I started chatting with these two devs who were just guys working on a grant from the ETH Foundation, and I was just describing them some of the protocol layers that are emerging upon Bitcoin right now that already exist on Bitcoin, and they're just totally unfamiliar. And I think that with recent developments that are emerging, maybe it's in the roll-up space, maybe it's somewhere else, it's really going to bring the tools that these guys are looking for. And I think that just general education is what's going to be convincing a lot of them. Right now, it's like a lot of the community out here, when I kind of lean into this community, it's the personality types are less long-term strategic focused thinkers on why they're involved in this industry. And they're more just tinkerers who are really interested in the ability to build effectively technologies that can do things that there's no other industry that allows them to really like move economic value in more complex ways. And like, that's generally more what their focus is. And I think, maybe that's more like, ooh, something shiny. And that's the reason they're attracted to it. But, I don't find that incentive that much different from other people who've gotten involved because number go up and then stayed for the movement after. And I think like that's kind of the approach that we want to take is, get involved because of the ability to like tinker, suit whatever those more short-term focus interests are within your mind, and then stay because they actually learn about the culture and see the value and understand that, this is much more than just being able to create financial technologies, and there's a societal movement happening.
Yeah, the tinkerers are more fun to talk to. And we have we're fortunate, but we also set this up well. Like there's just a lot of technical people in our area. The Bitcoin Research Institute at the University of Wyoming, it's like an hour north of us. There's the National Labs in Boulder and Golden. There's college campuses, Space Force, all the defense contractor companies are here. I mean, there's a talented just community of people in Denver, Bitcoin or not. And so we hope to, bring all those people in and help educate them, as Eric said.
Yeah. And I presume, every now and again, you're going to get speakers coming through town for some other event or whatever, and then you can kind of grab them and say, hey, come and do a talk with us, or come and do a, meet and greet or something. And that can be an event at, at Denver Space, right?
Right. Yeah. So earlier this week, we had a event, the financialization of Bitcoin.
Matt Dines from Build Asset Management.
Yeah, Matt Dines from Build Asset Management came out here and gave a talk. And that was great. And some of the people that were at that seemed like they weren't even people involved in Bitcoin.
No, it was targeted for your RIAs, your financial advisors, those type of people. We had Unchained folks in the room too, kind of answering questions about custody. It was really well done.
Yeah. So that was a big boy event, and we definitely had a lot more from the broader financial community within Denver involved. And I think as we progress, it's more like we identify experts that are involved within our community, and or contacts of experts that are involved, and then they come in, they give, and they can kind of bring in who's involved in their networks as well.
Yeah. And so then in terms of free and paid events, do you want to just outline, what that's looking like?
Because we're focused on education, I mean, mainly we want to make everything as open to the public as possible. We try to do, when we were keeping our members excited with monthly events before we had a building, we would do these, more community-focused, member-exclusive, tight-knit events. Maybe we'd go camping, maybe we'd go to a Rockies game or something like that, or do a cookout. And so we still like to do some of that member-exclusive stuff, just get to know each other better, get to know each other's families, support one another. We've even got a Skillshare list going around. It's okay, anybody got the mechanic that accept Bitcoin? Oh, yep, I know him, he's over here, that type of thing. So that's kind of a distinction of maybe what you get from being a member versus just being someone who attends events at the space in Denver publicly. And then, if it's bigger ticket items, maybe we'll have to do ticketed events for certain things, conferences, summits, etc. But ideally, we'd like to, if you're paying for membership, you're already supporting us. We'd like to keep, kind of access to everything open for you. And then just for the broader community, we'd love to do a lot of public free events, and then maybe some stuff would be ticketed. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think those are most of the questions I had. Anything else you want to mention?
I'll just say I think one of the coolest things that I've really enjoyed building, because I'm not a software guy, I was a mechanical engineer, was the tech infrastructure, building it from scratch. I worked at a big W-2 job, at a Department of Defense job, and whenever my laptop broke, I'm staring at Eric's right now. You go to the IT department, they're like, okay, there's all these systems, all this stuff you got to build, all the automation. It was all way over my head, but now I'm on the other end of that, and I get to help build it with our server, our public calendar, everything's hosted. We've got our own mempool instance. We've got our own node, our own Lightning liquidity. When we do video conference calls, it's literally routing through our server. I just think that's so fascinating, and you really get the satisfaction of saying, okay, everything I do with the space, you can store some files, you can do anything, you can route, you can use it as your Bitcoin node, your Electrum server. I think it's so cool to have something like that fully integrated for our members, all documented on our site, built in-house.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah, actually, one other topic that might be interesting, if anyone around the world is listening and thinking about doing something similar, do you have any advice on how they should set up their own kind of space, or something like what you guys are doing?
That's the goal. Everything we've kind of chat through today, we're hoping to have some form of compiled documentation about it, even just our learning do's and don'ts. It's do's and don'ts, or the pain points that we felt, and then obviously how that manifested into a nice, clean, step-by-step process, or we use this tool for that. We'd love to have all that mapped out for other people.
Yeah, I think so. There's the operational execution side of it, and while that's a heavy lift, I don't think that's the hardest part. I think the most important part, if you want to go do this in your local community right now, is you need to motivate your local community. You need to be, have an ability to persuade people and to set a vision and help them understand what this could be and align that with their own interests. And I think that, that's kind of how we started and took that kind of an approach with this. It's, when we had like our first meeting, there were certain people involved that, we set the vision with, and they were backing out. We had a lot of people that kind of like dropped out of wanting to support or provide their time in the first few months. And then there were the people that stayed motivated and kept participating. And I think that that's natural. The question's like, how many people are ultimately going to stay and support something if you want to do it bottom up like this? And
you learn that quickly, like who keeps showing up. Essentially.
Yeah. And so that, like, the onus is on you to really, if you want to start this thing, then the onus is on you to really sell that vision, define that vision, organize people around it. Because that's our most powerful tool, is that we have a bunch of people who are motivated to support this. And if you can get that, you can make anything possible. And that's kind of how we were selling this initial vision. And here we are. It ended up becoming much more powerful than we would have expected.
Totally.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a good spot to finish it. The website is denver.space. So listeners, if you're in the area, check them out for membership and events and everything. And if you're elsewhere around the world, maybe you've been inspired to try and do something similar or contribute at your local meetup or something similar. But yeah, Eric and Tyler, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Stephan.
Thank you.